All right, welcome to the 3-5-2 video. And what I'm going to show you is obviously how to play in a 3-5-2 system. And again, the numbers have changed, so I need you to be mindful of this. In this system, it's a back three with the number 2, 4, and 5 as your three center backs. Your two defensive midfield pivots in this 3-5-2 is 6 and 8. You have a 10 as the number 10, obviously. 3 is the left mid. 7 is the right mid. 9 and 11 is the two forwards. Okay, now there's a couple variations you could do off this, or one in particular. You could switch this to be one pivot instead of a double pivot system and then push 8 and 10 higher. Obviously, that leaves you a little bit more exposed defensively if you're not careful. So having a double pivot is very, very important. The other thing you're going to see in this system is a 5 and 5, which is something we're very big on in terms of offensive presence. And I touched on it a little bit in the 4-3-3 system, but didn't highlight it too much because it's a little bit harder to see. But in this one, it's much easier. Okay, now a 5 and 5 system is essentially where you attack with 5 and you would defend with 5. So you make sure you have 5 in defense and you make sure you have 5 in attack. That way, you should always have you have a balance when it comes to defending and attacking, which you're going to see as we play through this. Okay, now I've made the offensive sequence a little bit shorter, but how you could use a 3-5-2 to be deadly in terms of creating attacking options, just because you now have two center forwards instead of one, so it puts a little bit more pressure on the back line of the opponent. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna add the defenders in a second, and here we go. So we have our back three. We start with the ball with the middle center back, who plays out to the left center back. It gets in again. You can see the shifting of the opponent. They're trying to squeeze the field on one side, and they're playing. I didn't tell you this, but I should now. I've changed their system to be a 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1, just depending on where they're positioned. Okay, so on paper it was a 4-4-2. I changed it a little bit just so you can see a little bit of a different system. 5 plays into the 6, who's able to go pick up the ball, right? And you can see here the 11 started centrally, right, but moved to the fullback here to try and pin him and to isolate him. So right now it's a 1v1. But you can see we have the 3 on the outsider who's going to try and make a movement. So the 6 is able to turn and play into the 11. Now we have two options. The 3 making the overlap and the 10 coming short. Right? And now what's going to happen is the 2 has to make a decision. Does he go and pressure the 11? Or does he stay in his position and wait and see what happens? A lot of times, fullbacks will go and fly into pressure, especially at the youth level, because they're not as tactically aware, right? Now, you can do this. This isn't necessarily a bad option, especially if he doesn't have a central option. But you can see here he's an option to the left, and he's going to have an option to the right. So both, which is a very dangerous situation for this player. Okay, so he's going to follow, and you can see here now we have option. Okay, and so now it becomes 1, 2, 3 versus 1. Or even a 3 versus 2, which is obviously in favor of the attacking team. And you can see on the opposite side, we have a 1v1 or a 2v2. So we're getting 5 players forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the 7, 9, 10, 11, and 3. And we're defending with 5. We have 3 in the back, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 8, which are staying deeper in that 5 and 5 system I highlighted earlier. So we can see here, 11 lays off to the 10. The 9 is making a diagonal run to try and get the ball into space, which could happen. But you can see we still have the 3 open in a big pocket of space. So they get it wide and they break into the box. So I've obviously froze their defenders just to focus on the attacking phase. But once 11 passes into the 10, he's got to start running. Same thing with the 10. Pass and go. So it's now 5 versus 3. Lay off back to the 11 and shot. Okay. So again, it's a little bit quicker scenario because now I want to show you a defensive thing here, which is really unique with a 3-5-2 system. So you're going to see here in a second. Okay, so what happens here is this is where flexibility comes in, but it can also be a major problem. Okay, so the opponent, as I mentioned, is playing a 4-4-2, but really now it's a 4-3-3 just based on their formation setup. Right, the 7 went really wide, the 11 went more centrally narrow, which is okay. Okay, but here's benefits and also a problem. If you look to the right side, so you have the 2 and the 7, they have 2 players in wide spaces, We have 1, and now we're defending. Again, same thing on the other side. They have 2 in wide spaces. We have 1. So this is a negative issue with a 3-back system. Okay? Because it can turn to a 5. You can see here they've dropped in. Now it's 5 in the back. Versus 3. 2, 3. Okay? And this can cause problems, which you're going to see in a moment. So they're able to shift the ball wide. So watch, I push the 11 forward, and the 3 starts bombing forward. Because we're not able to go put pressure quickly enough, they can release to the outside channel, and you can see the 3 would have a lot of time. Which means the 7 and 2 have to make decisions. The 7 has to make a decision to go pressure or hold, and the 2 has to make a decision to cover the 11 or the 9, which can put them in a mess. So the weakness of this formation is the spaces out wide, because there's only 1 player in this zone typically. Because the 3 center backs don't want to be coming outside too much, or they're going to be exposed. Okay, so those are areas you have to really focus on, because centrally it's strong. They got 5 players centrally right here. Very strong vantage point. Right? However, the outside areas are where they're going to be really, really weak. Okay, so you can see here by this, we get this player. Now, a way to counteract this, let me bring it back to you again real quick, I apologize. The way to try and counteract this is to have your central midfield players slide. Okay, so what you can see here happening now is the 8 is going to come support. Right? Which means the 6 now has to slide. The 3, instead of dropping in with the 5 as a fullback or a wingback, slides into midfield. This is done to try and obviously create balance centrally. However, again, look at the opposite side though. It's exposed. So if we're not careful, we could turn into a big, troublesome situation because of where our players are positioned. Okay? But again, from a central standpoint, it really allows us to try and connect and block central areas. But obviously we have the threat of the long pass or the diagonal ball or the weak side. Okay? Because if the 3 decides to drop in as a fullback, the 10 and 8 are going to be a lot more open. And in this situation here, based on where the ball is, that would be a much bigger danger. Because it's much more likely that the ball is going to get to the 10 or the 8 than it is to the 7. When we're defending, you want to try and cover the more or the bigger current threats. So the bigger current threats, again, would be the 9, 11, 10, and 8. The 7 and 2 aren't that big of a threat just because of where they're positioned in this moment. Okay, and those are things we need to be mindful of in this game. Right? So those things need to be tracked and covered. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.